So Dr. Alan Rumble, he's passionate about providing quality guidance to people seeking to achieve financial independence. I've talked to him earlier this morning. He's very excited about this, and he's not a digital guy. He's analog. That's why he's bringing over this wonderful pad. He's currently an investment advisor representative with Royal Alliance Associates, Inc. And he believes that regardless of income, network, or investable assets, everyone deserves to have a financial coach and partner who can help navigate through the uncertainty. So please welcome to the stage, or below the stage, as it were, Dr. Alan Rumble.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here. This is not a presentation, by the way. This is a conversation. I'm not big on presentations. I've got all this PowerPoint stuff that I can barely stand. So I'm not going to do that to anyone that I care about. Today it's really about finding out what's important to you, answering your questions, and hopefully dissipating some of the fear and consternation around investments and saving and preparing for yourself down the road. As has been said, I am a financial advisor. I have a company called Freedom Financial Group. We service credit unions throughout Central Florida. I've got a team of advisors who work with me. If you get to know me, one of the things you'll learn about me is pretty much everything I do on a purpose. There's a purpose behind it. In fact, there's a purpose behind having named the company Freedom Financial Group. I have thought a lot about the fact that when it comes to investments and these kinds of things, there's as much psychology and philosophy behind it as there is picking good investments. Why Freedom Financial Group? Well, I always wonder what people really think money does. If I ask you, well, what does money really do? Some people think it kind of it can make them happy, or it can sort of insulate them from life, or you tell me, what do you think money does? What does money do for us? Anybody?
It takes care of your needs.
I'm sorry?
It takes care of your needs.
It takes care of your needs. I agree to that to a certain point. Some needs, okay, yeah. More flexibility. That's good. I like that.
Freedom.
That's it. That's it. You got it. Security. All that money does, the only thing that money does, is give us freedom of choice. It gives us freedom of choice. If we have enough, we can live where we want to live. We can drive what we want to drive. We can go where we want to go. We can eat where we want to eat. That's all it does. It gives us freedom of choice. So with that in mind, one of the places I always like to start with people, and I really love chatting with younger folks about this, because I didn't realize this till later in life. But a couple things I'm going to point to today that if you don't remember anything else about financial things, please remember these things, okay? Number one, I want you to realize that if you're sitting here thinking, you know what, I really don't know much about what he's talking about. Let me assure you that there is a universal lack of financial acumen in our country that is stunning. If you think about it though, I have a doctorate degree. I've gone to school my whole life. And the fact of the matter is, I never remember taking a course that was about what I'm talking to you about today. And I've often thought, what is the use of knowing pi to the 15th digit? What good does that do, What good does it do me now to know that in 1492 somebody did something? No, why didn't anybody ever sit down and talk to me about these things that have the ability to impact my life? First thing I want to talk to you about today is purpose of money. Every dollar you have should have a designated purpose, because the designated purpose determines where you put it and how you treat it, okay? If I've got a dollar whose purpose is for me to be able to write a check or to pay for my coffee, that dollar is going to be positioned and managed very differently than the dollar whose purpose is to provide retirement income 25 years from now. But most of us don't think that way. We think in terms of, it's just money. It's here today, it's gone tomorrow. No, designate a purpose to your money. That purpose will help you determine the best way to treat it and to manage it. Second thing I would say to you, start now. Start now. We were talking earlier that, we hear the old adage, well, it takes money to make money. Well, definitely it's great when you've got enough money that it's doing a lot of the work for you. But you do not have to start huge. Just start. If it's 25 bucks a month or whatever it is. I want to teach you something that hopefully will inspire you. It's called the Rule of 72. Have you ever heard of that? Anybody ever heard of the Rule of 72? Yeah. Basically what it says is you take the number 72 and you divide it by an interest rate or a rate of return, and it tells you how long it takes your money to double. To double. So let's say, for example, I start with $10,000. Well, 72, and let's assume that I got a 10% rate of interest. I hear a groan? Huh?
That was the last.
No.
It's a great interest rate.
That's
That's what he's saying, great
That really
return.
isn't that is not difficult. But 10 into 72, that's about 7 years. So every 7 years, my money doubles, which means my 10 becomes 20, and my 20 becomes 40, and my 40 becomes 80. I think it was Einstein who said this. Compound interest is like the eighth wonder of the world. It really is. You do not realize how putting some money away each month and letting it grow. I'll give you one. People always ask me, Alan, what do you think the market's going to do? I said, I don't think what the market's going to do. I know what the market's going to do. Markets go up and down. That's what they do. Up and down, 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 up. Okay. Let's talk about this. The Dow Jones Industrial started about 1890. Been a while. Now, at the end of the first day, the Dow Jones Industrial, which is one of the indices that basically monitors 30 of the top companies in the country and how they are performing. Well, at the end of the first day, it ended the day at 63. Okay? I was born October 1954. I always say, when they took my picture off and put some old guy up there. You know what I mean? I was born October 1954. October 1954, the Dow was at 3,500. 3,500. If you paid any attention to these kinds of things, last January, we passed 27,000. Keep in mind, we did that despite 2 world wars, the Great Depression, 9/11, the great financial meltdown of 2008, Vietnam, Korea, presidential assassinations, the gasoline crises, interest rate explosions, on and on and on and on. But the point is, what's it done always over time? It's gone up. Now, another interesting piece. This is the part I'm never going to forgive my dad for. In 1954, when I was born, if my father would have had the ability to take $10,000 and put it in an unmanaged Dow indexed fund and never added another dollar to it, it would have now doubled for me 9 times, based on what the Dow has done. So let me ask you a question. How much is 10,000 doubled 9 times? Any guesses? $5.12 million. $5,120,000. Did somebody say something about the power of compounding? Get started early. Don't be afraid of the markets. People ask me, Alan, what is the one biggest mistake people make when it comes to investing? And I can tell you categorically, it's that they're too conservative. They're too conservative. People worry about losing their money in the market. Let me teach you something. If you put your money into an individual stock, you are buying ownership into that company. That one company can go out of business and you will lose all your money. Indices, indexes, funds don't work that way. When I invest into a fund, I'm buying units of value into multiple companies, or even into an index that simply monitors, okay, what that's doing. It's not going to happen that we, quote, lose all of our money. We talk about risk. One of the biggest risks, and let me say this, when I think about risk, I think about potentiality. If I'm taking a risk, it means I have a potential to go up or I've got a potential to go down, right? Well, the reality is, one of the risks we talk about in our business is, to me, not a risk at all. It's a certainty. And that is inflation. Anybody know about inflation? For the last however long you want to think about it, it's averaged about 3 to 3.5% per year. Remember our rule of 72? At 3 to 3.5% per year, approximately every 20 years, my money's worth half what it used to be. Let me put this in perspective for you. I bought the most expensive, and you won't even know what this is because they don't make it anymore. In 1973, I bought the most expensive Pontiac automobile they made. It was, I can see it today. It was a beautiful black Grand Prix with the red pinstriping. It had all the bells and whistles. It was a hot car, right? I really had to deliberate. I didn't know if I wanted to spend that money, if I could spend that much money on an automobile. Drove it off the showroom, brand new. All the, tax whatever, $4,400. I didn't say $44,000. I said $4,400. You can't even imagine that, can you? You can't even buy a decent golf cart for that anymore. That's the power of inflation. The reality is, gang, if you're not making 3.5% per year, you're not staying even. And in order to do that, you can't be afraid. You're going to have to do more than just put your money into CDs or cash-based type things. You're going to have to make some good investments. And the way I think about it is, you simply want to create an intelligent, disciplined plan and stick to that. As a young person today, if I were going to tell you, well, Alan, where should I start? The very first place you should start is by opening a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA. Now the way that works is, a Roth IRA is a tax shelter that's provided to us by the IRS. Sometimes people ask me, Alan, what would an IRA pay? Well, an IRA doesn't pay anything because an IRA is not an investment. It is a shelter. I'm a farm boy from Southwest Indiana. I still have farms up there. And the reality is, this is like a little shed. This is like a barn. And its purpose is single. It is to keep taxes from raining down on us. It gives us some tax advantages. The reality is, the way this is going to perform is going to depend on the investment vehicles that we park inside it. Okay? So if I have it basically setting in a cash-based investment, like a CD or something like that, it's going to have a very, very low APR. If I put something in that has a higher return, then my IRA grows. But here's the thing that I want to teach you about a Roth IRA. With the Roth IRA, number one, you're going to fund it. I'm sorry to waste so much paper, but I want you all to be able to see, so I got to write a little bigger here. Let's talk about Roth and let's talk about traditional real quick. These are both IRAs. Let me teach you something. In the world, there are two types of money. There's what we call tax qualified money and non-tax qualified money. If it's qualified money, it's been given some kind of special treatment by the IRS. That could be a retirement account. That could be an educational funding account, like a 529 plan. That could be an HSA, a health savings account. All different kinds of qualified plans. When it comes to retirement, there are basically two types of qualified plans. One is an employer-sponsored plan. The other is a personal plan. An employer-sponsored plan is going to be something like a 401k, 403b. Government workers often have 457 plans. These are plans that an employer owns and has, and they allow us to participate. But it's their plan, it's not ours. Somewhere, there's always a plan document. And that plan document tells you the restrictions and the rules and how that plan works. Take advantage of those. As I said, first place to start, the Roth IRA, and if your employer plan offers a match, in other words, if you put money in and they match it, that's free money. As a very, very wise philosopher once said, I'm not a very smart man, but I know that's good. Get the free money. Beyond that, let's look at the power of the Roth. Once you understand these today, these are personal plans. Employer plans are those. Personal plans are generally going to be either a Roth or a traditional or some iteration of, so for retirement purposes, this is what I'm going to talk about. With a traditional IRA, it works very much like the employer plan. You fund that with what we call pre-tax dollars. So the effect of this is it gives you the ability to reduce your current income. Put the money into a shelter, that money earns and grows, and sometime down the future, you will take that money out. Now, because you didn't pay tax on that initially, and because you've never paid tax throughout the growth cycle, when you do start taking money out, every dollar that comes out of this traditional IRA will be taxed at your then applicable tax rate. Okay? Again, obviously the big advantage is the tax deferral. Two magic ages when it comes to traditional IRAs. Age 59 and a half and age 70 and a half. Before attaining age 59 and a half, if you take money out of a traditional IRA, you will then pay the tax that's due on those funds. Plus, you will incur a 10% early withdrawal penalty. At age 70 and a half, whether you want it or need it or not, the IRS requires you to start taking funds out of this IRA, out of this shed, and paying taxes. They call that an RMD, Required Minimum Distribution. RMDs start at about 3.65% of whatever your balance is on December 31st of that prior year. Starts at 3.65 and it goes up a little bit incrementally each year, okay? Maxes out at about 9%, something like that. The Roth IRA, why did I recommend that for younger people? Well, number one, with a Roth IRA, you are funding it with after-tax dollars. In other words, I receive my paycheck, I pay my taxes, I take what's left over, I put it into my Roth IRA, and it grows. Now, if you're under age 50, for 2019, current year, the maximum you can put into either a Roth or a traditional is $6,000 a year. You can put up to $6,000 per year. You're not forced to put all of it in. That's what you're allowed. If you're age 50 or more, you have what's called a catch-up provision. The catch-up provision gives you the ability to add another $1,000 for a total of $7,000 in 2019. Now think about this with me. A couple things. With the after-tax dollars, that grows and it's tax-free when you take it out. Why? Because I already pay tax on my deposits. The benefit of the Roth, and this is the one that just blows my mind, I can't believe IRS allows this. They let all the gains and growth happen and never tax you on it. Now think about this. What if my father, when he set up that $10,000 account for me when I was young, right, would have had the ability to put it into a Roth. He puts in $10,000 and now it's at $5.12 million and it's not taxed. Let me give you another teaching moment here. It's not how much money you have. It's not how much money you make. It's how much money you have after taxes. Seriously. I mean that sincerely. It's how much you have after taxes. A couple things about the Roth. Number one, you can take your principal back out prior to age 59 and a half without penalty. You can use it like a savings plan. If you don't need the money, you don't want the money, you're able to leave it in there, it continues to grow. Something happens, you need some funds, you can't always go back and take your principal out. You can't capture your gains, but you can access your principal, okay? Secondly, there are no RMDs for the owner of the Roth at age 70 and a half. So let's say I had put that $5 million in the Roth now and I don't need all of it. I don't really want to take any more than I have to, than I really need to. I'd like to leave some for the university or whatever. Well, guess what? I don't have that 70 and a half RMD thing holding over my head.
Is that passed on to the child?
It will pass on to the child. However, the child will have to start taking RMDs. The exclusion of RMDs on Roth IRAs is only for the owner, okay? Generally, when it comes to passing these on, one of the advantages of these types of plans is they do pass by beneficiary designation, meaning there is no probate process or anything like that. Like an annuity, like an insurance policy, retirement account like this, you get to designate the beneficiary or beneficiaries that you want it to go to, and at your passing, it goes directly to them without any probate process or court or anything like that. Okay? Yeah. So, I just think about the fact that if you're 25 years old, and you can even put $25 a month into something like this Roth, thinking about the compounding of that between now and your retirement age, you will be stunned. You would absolutely be stunned. Number one, how much you could acquire, and the fact that it's tax-free. I want to come back to one more point. don't be afraid of the market. We know what it's going to do. It's going to go up and it's going to go down. In my own accounts, I spend a couple hours a day managing my own account. I have learned it's as simple as this. Buy red and sell green. You know, I'm exaggerating, but don't be afraid of it. I mean, like I said, purpose of money, if you understand the purpose of money, some of your money is going to be money that you need right now. It needs to be available all the time. Some of your money, in fact, I call this FML. First money, that's money that you just operate on day by day by day. That account receives your checks, your income, you pay your bills and expenses from it. Middle money is money that I intend to have invested 3 to 5 years. That's my goal. But if I need that money, I want to be able to get to it in, let's say, 7 to 10 days. Then there is some money that I really do want it to be later money. In fact, I also call that end-of-life money and legacy money. You're going to pass it on. Go ahead.
Do you pick your own stocks?
I do, in my own accounts. I
Yeah.
don't do that. We do generally what I call basket types investments for clients. The one that I do use myself is called a UIT, Unit Investment Trust. Unit Investment Trust is very much like a mutual fund or an ETF, exchange traded fund. I just like them better. They're much more transparent. There's various things that I like about that better. But yeah, in my own account I do, and it's fun, it's interesting, it's depressing some days. But you know what, like I say, if I've got my first one later, you know what's going to happen, gang. You know the market's going to go up and down. Don't be afraid of that. I talked about the psychology. Let me give you one more thing here. I see this all the time, and I'm about out of time, right?
You've got till 10:45, I believe.
Okay, what? So basically, I got so
Psychology.
relaxed from the yoga.
Well,
Stock market goes up and down.
yeah,
Don't be
maybe,
afraid.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I actually felt taller when I stood up.
Yeah.
I mean, is that weird?
I have a follow-up. if you-
Maybe that was it.
I read
I
where
think you
Warren
triggered
Buffett
him.
said, like, he can't even beat the S&P 500 index. Like,
Said what?
He can't even beat the S&P 500.
Well, yeah, that's.
So, and it was just a recent thing. He was talking to someone recently about it. So,
The indexes, I mean, if you think about it, what is the index? The index is simply, the S&P 500, that is basically looking at 500 companies within the U.S. markets. And, it's kind of like what you're trying to do, you're trying to pick, in picking a stock, you're trying to pick the one lone dog that's going to outrun all the pack.
Right.
You ever watch, I used to be an avid bicyclist, and I loved the Tour de France. You ever watch the Tour de France and the big peloton of all these bikers, and it's like they move in mass, but every now and then one or two will break out. Well, they gotta really work, or that peloton's just gonna come right back and absorb them right back in. That's very much how this works. It's tough to find that outlier that's just gonna take off and leave everything else. Because generally the index, which is the peloton, which is all these other companies, they're just going to be doing what they're doing. Now, with that said, keep in mind that going back over the last 50 years, the S&P 500, on average, has averaged over 10% per year. That's the reason I said when somebody laughed, 10% is not a big deal. Over time, yeah, there's going to be times of adjustment, correction, but over time, the markets have continued to perform. I showed you where it went from 63 to 3,500 to 27,000. A lot of the prognosticators that I read say there's no reason it won't touch 40,000. Nothing to keep it from doing that. It's just a matter of the economy and growth and all of that. So the reality is, as I say, don't be afraid of the market. You know what it's going to do. It's going to go up and down, up and down, up and down. Knowing that, don't be too conservative. That's the biggest mistake you can make. At your ages, most of you that I'm seeing here, you want to be as aggressive as you possibly can. Pick funds, pick allocations that are aggressive. And guess what? You're going to get your statement. First thing you want to do is put that thing aside, because that's just a fear factor kind of thing for most people. Put it in, let it grow, be aggressive. The markets will do what markets do. You do what you know is best, and that is being consistent in your investment, and it's a matter of letting the money do what it will do in the market.
When do you start becoming more conservative?
Start now.
No, I mean, like, when do you start becoming more conservative and move away from aggressive?
That is, again, that's a very interesting question. For a long time, and a lot of quote advice that you hear on the networks is that as you get older, you should become more conservative. I think that is more a factor of circumstances than age. I'm not a fan of age-based funds. The way target date funds work, they look at you and they say, you're this age, you're going to expect to retire about this time. So each year they go from a little more aggressive to a little more conservative. They do that automatically. Well, the fact of the matter is, I run into people that because of the amount that they have saved, the only hope they have of a successful retirement is to be a little more aggressive and get higher returns. They can't get more conservative, because if they do, they're dead. There are people who have so much that it's like, I too don't need to be aggressive. I've got more money than I ever want or need. Why do I need to risk it? Okay? It's really more a matter of your individual case. Another question I get all the time, well, Alan, how much do I need to retire? Well, that's like asking, well, which way do I drive from the university? Depends on where I'm going. If I'm a person that I've worked my entire life and I've traveled all over the world, and my dream retirement is to be able to build my little cabin out here and have a lake and a garden and shut out the world, that income need is going to be very different than the person who says, you know what, we've never done anything, I'm going to retire, I'm going to do 2 around the world trips a year. You see what I'm saying? Very, very different retirements. And the income need is going to be very different for those 2 types. It's really a matter of kind of backing into it. What I always do in my discovery meetings with people is I try to understand kind of what their income need is. What is their lifestyle? You know, are they big spenders? Are they savers? Are they frugal? Are they aggressive? And then based on their income need, we can start putting numbers together and kind of back out into a retirement income plan based on what they have a tendency to spend, okay? So no, it's not any certain number. It's really a matter of lifestyle and income need and building an intelligent, disciplined plan around that, okay? Other questions? Any other questions? That's the main thing I want to cover. Any questions that you guys have? Yeah.
I have one about the IRAs. You said one is where you're not taxed when you put the money in, ones you're not taxed when you take the money out,
Correct.
and the Roth is the one where you're not taxed when you take it out.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The reason I like the Roth so well for younger people, besides the time value and that money being tax-free, generally people who need to use a traditional IRA, part of the strategy is they are now making enough money in their careers. They're concerned about current tax liabilities. Well, if I'm using a traditional IRA, and parenthetically, let me say this. A lot of times people don't understand. If your employer has a plan, like a 401k or 403b or whatever, you can max that out and still contribute to your IRA, a personal IRA. A lot of people get confused about that. I'm sorry? Both of them, yes. I won't get into the details of it, but Roths do have an income limit. If you make too much money, they start phasing out your ability to take, to put money into it. But for most people, if they're using a traditional IRA, part of the strategy is to reduce their current taxable income. Remember, you're taking money before you pay tax and you're putting it in the shed. That reduces the taxable income for that year, okay? The reason that I like the Roth for the young people, number one, they're generally not at their highest or higher earning level. They're not so concerned about mitigating current tax. Again, because they have the timeline. People who use the traditional IRA, that is a way for them to reduce their current tax liability as well as get tax deferral. That's the reason, a lot of times younger people will come in and say, I want to open an IRA. And when most people, when you hear the word IRA, they mean traditional. That's just kind of the way it works. Roth IRAs are often just referred to simply as Roth. And as I say, if you're age 45 or below, my recommendation is start with the Roth, and then as your income increases, and part of your concern is to bring down your annual current tax burden, that will give you the ability to lessen that as well. So, but definitely take advantage of those plans. Those are, like I said, it's not how much you have, it's how much you have after taxes. Other questions?
Is there,
Yes.
is there a Roth IRA like servicer that you tend to go to? Like, if I'm Googling Roth IRA,
Yeah.
what do I click on?
Basically, what I would recommend, one of the groups that we work with is Inside Credit Union, and I encourage people to get, in terms of just getting started, just go to the credit union and have them open you up a Roth IRA, and then every week you get paid or whatever, just have it automatically put in there. Now, once you get out to, get a few $1,000s in there, then you may want to think about doing something beyond that, which, depending on how astute you are on these kinds of things, I often recommend people just to go on E-Trade or Ameritrade or any of those online discount trading services, and you can open that up there. When you set it up, you'll set it up as either a non-qualified plan or as a qualified plan. Choose the Roth, set it up as a Roth, and just put your money into the funds there.
So you're saying that all Roths are created equal then? It doesn't
sorry?
matter that all Roths are created equal. In other words, it doesn't matter from whom you set it up.
No. Yeah, exactly. Remember, the Roth is the shed.
Mm.
That's all it is. The Roth is a tax vehicle provided to us by IRS. What we put in it, that really is the matter of personal choice and risk tolerances and those kinds of things. Yeah. Okay. But do it early. Do it early. One other thing I'll dollar cost averaging. One of the advantages of doing an early, putting a plan like this together early and doing it consistently is what we call dollar cost averaging. What that means is that, let's say that you set it up that on the 15th of every month, money is taken from your checking and is put into your retirement plan. Well, if you're buying into, let's say, a particular mutual fund, well, that's gonna fluctuate over time through the year. Sometimes when your 15th hits, the market will have dipped, the fund will have dipped, and you're buying more units at lesser cost. Sometimes it may be, in the middle or higher. But the reality is that over the long haul, by doing it consistently every month, you're going to average the investment, if you will. They call that dollar cost averaging. And so, like I said, don't worry about if it's, trying to quote time the market. Some people they say, well, I'm not going to put it in until there's a correction or there's a dip. Part of the problem is when is high and when is low. Nobody really ever knows. If you just do it consistently, over time, you'll get a much better result than trying to, quote, time the market and deposit all of it in at one point. So, yeah. Anything else?
Yeah.
Any glass over eyes here? Don't be afraid of it, guys and gals. Don't be afraid of investing. Don't be afraid of the markets. Know what, yeah. The one thing I was going to talk to you about before that slipped my mind when I was here is the psychology of investing. Generally, a lot of people, what they will do, so they've got, let me show you the psychology. So you've got someone here, and they've got their $100,000, and it's in an account, and it's not really doing anything. So they say, well, they're going along, and of course they hear the news, and everybody's talking about the market going higher, and their friends and their colleagues are talking about how much money they're making in the markets and in their 401ks and all this. And so somewhere about right here, they say, well, I think I want to get some of that. I'm missing out. I'm missing out. And so, but then they don't just invest right in because they got to go talk to their plumber and their lawn guy and everybody else. Everybody's always got a brother-in-law they want to talk to. And so about right there, they take their 100,000 and they invest it into the markets. What's the market going to do?
Up and down, up and down,
Up and down, up and down, up and down. What happens? It starts down. Boom, starts down. And I know what happens. In their mind, they really do think, I'm going to lose all my money. Somewhere about right here, they panic and they sell it and they lock in their loss. I've had people all the time tell me, oh, Alan, I lost so much money in 2008, I'm just scared of the market. Well, what that tells me is they made some really dumb choices. The worst and dumbest choice was selling out when it was down. The psychology is tough, but the strategy is, instead of selling out, round up the rest of your dimes and pennies and put it in the market. Because what happened? Since 2008, it's come back 100%. And by the way, it's increased another 100%. So the person who cashed out, put the money into cash, and has been getting 0.125 on their CD is now back up after 10 years. They're now back up to $63,000. The person that just wrote it out has their 100 and an additional 100 to go with it, and they're at $200,000. Don't do dumb things. Understand the psychology, understand markets, don't be afraid, you'll be just fine. Now, I'm done.
Thank you.